Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else? All of us together, in and out of government, must bear the burden. The solutions we seek must be equitable, with no one group singled out to pay a higher price. We hear much of special interest groups. Well, our concern must be for a special interest group that has been too long neglected. It knows no sectional boundaries or ethnic and racial divisions, and it crosses political party lines. It is made up of men and women who raise our food, patrol our streets, man our mines and factories, teach our children, keep our homes, and heal us when we're sick. Professionals, industrialists, shopkeepers, clerks, cabbies, and truck drivers. They are, in short, we the people.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is The Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. So, sometimes we need to do things a little differently. This piece is purely based on an interview that Brett Baer had with Pete Buttigieg, I think his name is, isn't it? Pete Buttigieg or something like that. Special report last week. Now, full disclosure, at the time of the airing of this interview, I actually had to turn it off. Why? Because of the fact he was accepting, as you will hear, Buttigieg's responses, that's how I pronounce it anyway, for the most part, with almost zero rebuttal. There were a few rebuttals, but not many. So to make it a little bit more even-handed, I thought I would do it a little different. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to play interference for the president, so to speak, and do what MSNBC did to the president. Use the same tactics. In this piece, he discusses Donald Trump and the violence and how things are done wrong. Here's that first clip.
Pete Buttigieg is former Democratic presidential candidate, served as mayor of South Bend, Indiana from 2020 this year. Mayor Pete, to the program.
Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Earlier in the show, we heard former Vice President Biden address the violence in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and really violence across the country. Protests are okay and necessary. The violence has to be condemned. Because it took until today, did Biden and the Democrats give Republicans an issue that they're hitting on again and again?
No, I think Democrats have always been clear that we support the peaceful right to protest and also that we believe in nonviolent protest. We also have to address the underlying issues here. And the simple reality is that we are seeing more and more chaos and violence under the Trump presidency, and there's no reason to expect that it would get any different or any better if he were reelected.
Now, hold it. If they support non-violent protests, well, with their absolute silence on it for more than 90 days, doesn't that actually convey the opposite view? And violence is somehow his fault when he begged governors to let him in and help. Democratic governors, by the way, 90 days, and they have remained silent. And they can blame Trump for the violence. The only conclusion is that they want the violence to continue, not Trump, the Democrat leaders and the Democrat Party itself. They want it to continue, but only now they come out of the woodwork and denounce some of it, cherry-picking the bits they want to talk about and skirting around the main issue of organised, and I stress organised, and well-funded, and I stress the words well-funded, riots that these governors refuse to crush. Why is there no investigation into the organised and well-funded riots. Here's the second clip.
Well, the Trump administration would say that they're calling for these cities to aggressively stop this violence in the streets, including calling up the National Guard in some of these states.
Well, we've seen the president's idea of how to deal with peaceful protesters, like when he tear-gassed protesters in Lafayette Square, leading even military leaders to apologize and a lot of Republicans to condemn his behavior. I wouldn't be looking to the president for advice on how to deliver peace and stability.
So now they bring up the so-called protesters in Washington, D.C. and claim tear gas was used. We don't actually know for sure that that was the case. To stand back and allow rioters to run roughshod down Pennsylvania Avenue without any person stopping someone setting a fire in the president's church, the church that many presidents worship at, and not both stop it and condemn it, is a disgrace, and they know it. Here's the third clip.
He is a master of chaos. He thrives on it, and I don't think he has any interest in justice or peace when it comes to the real issues of the day, which is how to make sure we have racial justice and peace and security in our cities and in every part of this country.
But, Mayor, you've seen the video. You've seen people getting shot in some of these cities. You've seen the call for just some kind of control. I mean, isn't it getting out of hand in some of these places?
Look, no one, at least I don't think any reasonable person believes that violence is appropriate, and it's a disservice to the message of, by the way, the vast majority of those who are taking to the streets insisting that racism is wrong and it's got to change. But again, the president's strategy has obviously not helped because all of this chaos is happening on his watch.
So all of this tragedy is happening under his watch. Really? Remember, hands off, don't shoot? That never happened. We know it never happened. Obama was the president. Did they blame the Democrat president for that? If they hated the police so much, why didn't they demand Obama defund the police? After all, he was in charge. The Republicans did not blame the president for the violence then, and neither should the Democrats now. It's a cheap and low blow. Here's the fourth clip.
This is very much characteristic of living in Donald Trump's America, and I think we're going to see more and more of it as long as he's in charge.
As I said previously, it happened in the Obama administration. Remember Baltimore? Lawlessness is just that, and all you get from that is more of the same, and they know it. Here's the fifth clip.
Okay, I mean, it's interesting to put it on his lap, and he's calling for more, effort to kind of crack down on some of this violence. Let me turn, though, to what you're seeing in the Republican convention. A lot of criticism about the use of the trappings of the White House, the criticism of the Secretary of State speaking in Jerusalem. The White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, addressed that. Take a listen.
Nobody outside of the Beltway really cares. They expect that Donald Trump is going to promote Republican values, and they would expect that Barack Obama, when he was in office, that he would do the same for Democrats.
Your reaction to that?
We don't decide whether to follow laws or break laws based on taking a poll of how many people care. It's wrong and illegal to use taxpayer resources for campaigning. Now, that may not be the only issue or the biggest issue that's on Americans' minds. I think what's really driving this election is the president's failure to protect American lives and the economic disaster we're living through.
So this piece was answered by Brett Baer. The Hatch Act does not apply to the president, and he knows that. This is typical Saul Alinsky tactics. If you're wrong, which he is, muddy the waters just enough to create a modicum of doubt. Here's the sixth clip.
To be clear, it is wrong and illegal to use taxpayer resources for campaigning. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Certainly when I was in uniform, I would have been in so much trouble if there was even a whiff of partisan activity on federal time. But like so many other laws and rules and norms in our country, this president doesn't care, and I guess his chief of staff doesn't either.
Well, the Hatch Act does not apply to the president or vice president. There are specific areas of the White House that don't fall under it by the statute itself. And the Republicans argue that President Obama used parts of the White House in political ads before, as have other Democrats in the past.
There's never, does anybody seriously believe that this is in keeping with norms in the past? There's a reason why political conventions and political speeches and activities take place off of federal grounds.
Sure, but this is also COVID-19, and he tried to have it in Charlotte, and he tried to have it in Jacksonville. He's having it in his home, which happens to be the White House.
America besides the White House? Come on, nobody believes that. Democrats were able to hold a convention without being on any taxpayer-funded property. I'm sure the President of the United States was capable of doing the same. I think he did this to remind his supporters and just show that he doesn't have to follow rules, he doesn't have to follow norms and dare anybody to challenge it. And I think there are going to be some legal challenges to this. Look, I don't want us to go down to this rabbit hole because I think on some level they kind of wants us arguing about technicalities so that we're not talking about the president's failure to protect American lives from coronavirus and the economic disaster that's unfolding around us. But just to be really clear, it is illegal and wrong to use taxpayer resources for campaign purposes in this.
And obviously they push back and challenge that, and we'll fight that battle down that rabbit hole as Congress looks into it. I want to turn to foreign policy quickly. Former Defense Secretary for the Obama administration, Bob Gates, said about Vice President Biden, quote, has been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. He stands by that statement. What do you think about that?
Well, here's what I know. On the foreign policy and security issues right now, Vice President Biden has the right vision, and Donald Trump doesn't even make sense. We're talking about, remember, Donald Trump specifically praised the transparency, and that was his word, of Xi Jinping when it came to the coronavirus. According to his own former national security advisor, John Bolton, he specifically encouraged China putting people in concentration camps because of their religion. We're not going to take any lectures on China or any other foreign policy issue from this White House. And by the way, there's a reason why international respect for the American government and the American people has collapsed under this president. There have been previous times when other countries have been mad at the United States. This is the first time in my lifetime that other countries have felt sorry for the United States.
Well, here's another critique of Biden and the Iraq war vote. Quote, this is an example of why years in Washington is not always the same thing as judgment. He supported the worst foreign policy decision made by the United States in my lifetime, which was the decision to invade Iraq. That was from you in December of 2019.
Yeah, I believe the Iraq war was a mistake, and I believe Joe Biden has said the same thing with the benefit of hindsight. But again, we're not going to take lectures on the Iraq war from the Republican Party at a time like this. And, that was 2003. This is 2020.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg, we appreciate your point of view. Welcome back anytime.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Biden exposed for his failure on foreign policy decisions. Buttigieg's response is quite frankly incomprehensible. And finally, Biden, who was involved in the disastrous withdrawal from Iraq before they were ready, thinks Biden knows best. He thinks Biden knows best. It was the president who had to pick up the pieces, that is President Trump, of a failed Middle East policy by the Biden-Obama administration. It was the president who was left to deal with the, quote, JV team, which he did. So if anybody's in any doubt of the real truth, just look at the facts. The trouble is the Democrats never look at the facts, do they? Just like the Liberals in Canada. They're inconvenient and they get in the way of their truth. Have you noticed now that there are two truths? There's the truth and then there's the Liberal Democrat truth. And then depending on which way you lean is the one you look at. What a sad reflection on our society. Very, very sad. I just want to say this, if you're an American listening to this, but you must be wondering, because I would be, I'm sure, that blank, 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 is it to do with me, meaning me not being an American citizen? Well, let me explain. I can only speak for what I know, i.e. Canada. What happens in the US, unlike the phrase, does not stay in the US. Let me expand a little. The consequences of a US presidential election and the ramifications that come from it affect millions of people outside of the US. One example being Canada. Our government here in Canada is just one short step away from being a full-blown socialist government, and many of us here know that all too well. If Trump is not elected, or should I say re-elected, then that act is more than likely to push what I believe the communist leader of our country over the edge into pure socialism and force us to being a socialist state. I'm just going to give you a little bit of information on that. He is going on a spending spree. Now, I know the United States is going on a spending spree, but you must consider this. Our economy is considerably smaller than yours, and he is running up a debt 7 times greater than any debt we've ever had. Ever. It's unsustainable. So why does that matter? Because the Canadian dollar is less value than the US dollar. Everything we purchase is valued in US dollars. As the ability of a country declines to pay its bills, the value of its currency also declines. Canada is in a dire condition economically. The mainstream media here in Canada cover it up. We are in terrible trouble. We've had a 32% drop in GDP. 32%. Now, I know you would have your problems if you elected a socialist, i.e. Biden, but you have your constitution that will slow or even stop any attempt to take over America. Plus you have guns. And those things all together give you a large measure of protection. Not complete, I admit, but Canadians have none of that. We have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which Trudeau is just ignoring. And nobody here is challenging him. Free speech is going out the window, and the mainstream media here are not challenging it. This is just one example. Obviously there's China and their determination to control the world. And then there is Russia, which you never underestimate. Those are just a few reasons why the whole world looks, waits and wonders what will happen. And some of us, quite frankly, are even praying. Because if Biden gets in, Canada is done. If Biden gets in, the world economy, quite frankly, will collapse. That's not me repeating Donald Trump's comments. It's an economic fact. The new Green Deal has already been tried in the UK with catastrophic responses. Catastrophic. And even those catastrophic responses have been covered up by a Conservative government. There are windmills everywhere. Electricity costs more. It costs more to drive a car. It costs more to do anything. The free market economy in the UK is covering mistakes that a Conservative government is making by enforcing climate change crap. They stick up windmills all over the country, destroying scenic views, destroying people's lives. They are forcing people into electric roller skates. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants them. And you, in America, will be forced into an electric roller skate, whether you like it or not. That's not the America you know, and that's not the America I know. The America I know is choice. Choice. And the same is happening in Canada. We are being forced into directions that Canadians do not want to go. All parties in Canada are promoting climate change. All parties in Canada are promoting electric roller skates, higher utility costs. Why? Because they're all going in the same direction. There's only one person who isn't. His name is Donald Trump. And that's my comment. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, Parler, Spotify, and email. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass these links on to your friends. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com/A-Radio. That's EHRADIO, a radio. And please click on the like button. Join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday, 11:45 Eastern, for our morning moment or tweak. And tell your friends, pass the word. We only tell the truth, not what the Canadian mainstream media want you to know. This time, more than any in history, we all need to trust but verify.